morning and welcome to this session on the digital single market. I'm KATYA, ADLER, the BBC's Europe editor. So the digital single market, what is it exactly and what kind of an impact will it have on our lives and our businesses? Well, soon we'll be hearing from our very distinguished panel. But in a nutshell, the European Commission says the digital single market will tear down virtual borders and barriers and will benefit all of us. It'll make internet shopping online across Europe much easier, for example. It'll finally end those roaming charges, and certainly in my job, I'll be very happy about that one. It's also likely to have a huge impact on this sector, on all of us broadcasters and program makers as well. We hope to find out a lot more this morning, and we'll be asking your views at the end of this discussion about some of the questions we'll highlight there. You'll be able to vote using your RTS app, which you should all have access to. But let's hurry on then with the debate. Let me introduce my panel. On my far left is JORGEN GREN. I hope you don't come under too much fire today. JORGEN is a member of the cabinet of Vice President ANSIP of the European Commission and a lead in the digital single market agenda. Thank you very much for joining us. On my immediate left, John McVeigh, Chief Executive of PACT, the UK body representing producers in film and television. Thank you for joining us. HELEN BURROWS is here. She's the Head of Policy, Media Policy at BT. And Anthony Walker is here from TechUK. Thank you, all of you. Before we start, please, if I could ask you, JORGEN, just to briefly, I mean, it's a huge vision of the Commission's, but to briefly outline the priorities of the digital single market in your opinion, and how much it will affect the producers, the distributors, the consumers of film and television across Europe. And very key for the Commission, of course, when is this all going to happen?
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me here today. This is a little bit of an unusual setting for me as a bureaucrat to sit here a bit like a film star. So, but thank you for that invitation and that possibility here to engage with the industry, to hear your concerns and to listen to what you have to say. I mean, the digital transformation is a high-speed train coming, and the digital single market is there to ensure that we actually get on this train, bringing down the barriers, making better choices for consumers, ensuring that we actually have a competitive industry in all different parts of the industry in the European Union today. This is what the digital single market is about. When it comes to creative and cultural industries, we think that this is one of the most important industries in the European Union. We have well noted the importance in terms of GDP, around 4%, in terms of employment, a little bit more than 3%. So we think it's very important. You produce the cultural diversity that we have here. You also have very successful businesses. Extremely important. So are we putting sort of our money where our mouth is in this sense? Yes, we are. We are supporting very strongly the cultural and creative industries. We have a media program, for instance, which has got around 1.46 billion euros. 56% is only for audiovisual. We have creative lending facilities, which we hope will bring about around 600 million euros in investments in the creative and culture industries. But there is a paradigm change. This has also been described in the study by Ernst & Young that you did, the creative and culture industries last year. It's about abundance of content at your fingertips straight away. It's about personalization. It's about the new role of platforms and aggregators, something that you've been speaking about here, I suspect, for the past 2 days. But it's also about mobility. It's also about new habits. Some of the figures that were shown here today are from our studies. I can give you a few more. 8% of internet users tried cross-border access last year. 50% of those who did not try are interested in trying. 30% of people think portability, if I may use a colloquial expression, is a no-brainer. And this gets, what I'm trying to say here is that this is a development which is coming. And if you look at the figures, this is across the board from people from 15 to 64. But if you look across for younger people, these figures go up extensively. So cross-border opportunities for younger people, there are around 60% or 58% of younger people who would like to have these cross-border opportunities. So consumer behavior is changing. Consumer behavior is also about, unfortunately, piracy, and this costs money. I've seen some figures from Ipsos saying that around 30% of UK population is engaged in piracy, and that it costs you, the industry, 500 million pounds per year in this country alone, just to deal with or in lost income. So the situation has changed. And from the European Commission side, what we want to do in terms of copyright is not to make a revolution, but to have a targeted approach to accompany the industry on this path, if you will, of modernization, of meeting this new consumer demand. So therefore, we think that cross-border access and portability are issues we need to deal with. There are other things in the copyright proposals that will come out towards the end of this year and also in 2016, which is about exceptions, text and data mining, access for people with disabilities. Another thing which is very important, and here we come into the balanced approach that we try to have. I said we have the support to the industry. We have the discussion about access to the industry. The third leg in this is about the enforcement. I mentioned to you the cost of piracy is not good. We want people, consumers, and all you as well, I think we see eye to eye to that, to pay for their content. So therefore we want to work also on the enforcement side, on actions to follow the money, on actions to look at what kind of responsibilities platforms have in this. So just to finish here, my fourth point is the digital single market. Copyright is only one of the actions in the digital single market. There are many other actions there which are important, which should be seen as a total, as a sum. And this is about, for instance, the platform discussion. This is about geo-blocking outside of copyright. It's about VAT. It's about free flow of data. It's about a lot of things which will help, we hope, at the end of the day, in the digital single market to create growth and jobs. Thank you very much.
Jürgen, thank you. Just to pick up on a few of your points there, you made a strong argument that the Commission cares very much about culture, about cultural diversity, and so on. But we heard in the report there of Rory's that there is a very strong fear that cultural diversity exactly will be damaged with the digital single market. If you take away the ability to create revenues by splitting up territories, that is the business model that niche markets will use, independent producers and so on.
Of course, I mean, as has been said in the film, and as you said as well, there's a business model. We've said it quite clearly in the digital single market strategy that the solutions that we will propose will take into consideration the current business model, and try to see, also together with the industry, what type of solutions we can have to have better cross-border access. We need to be able, at a certain moment, to answer the question, how do we cater for the demand which is out there for cross-border access? How do we cater for the cultural diversity which doesn't find a market because it's not relevant for a distributor to buy the rights for a very small Italian movie to sell it to Estonia, for instance. But there is some kind of demand there for this cultural diversity. So how do we cater for that type of demand? How do we get that cultural diversity to flow? How do we get the works to flow better across the border? Right now, we are in the impact assessment phase for this proposal. So we are looking at and assessing a variety of different options, including on portability, and as I said, including on cross-border access, to see what is the evidence, what are the options that we have, what are the solutions which will permit us to go forward, respecting, as we said, the business models of the industry. Okay, well, let me broaden out the debate now. John McVeigh, the Commission's vision is that European consumers should have access to a lot more content, and European producers should have access to a much larger market of consumers. So what's not to like about that?
Well, I think both of those things are already true. I think the 8% that are mentioned there, most of them were able to find the content that we're seeking on legitimate services anyway. Europe has over 3,000 VOD services which get licensed content from all around Europe. In the UK, you can find 90% of all legitimate content available on legitimate platforms. So, to me, you know, I represent a whole range of companies, big and small, who will sell their content to anyone in Europe who wants to buy it at very graduated prices. So I just don't recognise this position that somehow people can't get what they want legitimately. They are getting what they want legitimately. My big problem, and I welcome the points about piracy and enforcement, but my big worry is if we can't finance our content to begin with, then there will be no piracy because we won't have the content that people want. We need to protect our rights to sell our property at a price we want to sell it at to other people who want to buy it. If we remove geo-blocking, territoriality, then we can't do that. And that means the high quality content we enjoy in the UK and indeed in many other parts of Europe, we will not be able to finance it. The market is already developing all the solutions for this. I think portability is a legitimate debate. But in terms of removing geo-blocking for my members selling to a free-to-air broadcaster in Lithuania, who then puts it on a VOD service, and for everyone else in Europe to be able to see that for free will damage the price I can then get in other parts of Europe.
There is a bit of confusion, I think, about what the Commission would like to do in this. I mean, there have been some very damning statements by the Commission about geo-blocking, this idea that, you know, you can block certain territories. On the other hand, you're saying that you want to look at a way of working with industry to protect existing business models. I mean, how do you marry the two?
Of course, we have to, as I said, I mean, we have to tread carefully as the European Commission, and we do. I mean, we have some of the highest standards. I will not exaggerate too much, but we have very high standards when it comes to the impact assessment, probably higher than most countries in Europe. And so we tread carefully, we analyze the problem, and then when we have this analysis clear, we present the results with the solutions that we think are appropriate. And this process is now ongoing. What we want to do, as I said, the aim is to ease cross-border access without destroying the value chain. This is the aim. But I can't go any further into the exact details of this and that article and what have you, because, as I said, we are right now in the process of assessing the different options that we have seen. As I said, the analysis that I just in 2 minutes presented to you, it's there. There is a certain legitimate concern from consumers that they can't access content. This is how we've seen the figures. This is how we interpret the figures. But as I said, let's look at the different options as we go forward.
I mean, you say you're in an assessment stage. I'm just interested that the Commission says that with the digital single market, you're hoping to create 415 billion euros of growth in Europe. What evidence do you have that when it comes to the digital single market that it will benefit this industry?
Well, I mean, if we are able to improve the situation when it comes to enforcement, fighting piracy, it will help the industry. If we are able, together with the industry, to give opportunities to provide better service, it will help the industry. If we take down the barriers for the industry to sell their products across the board, it will help the industry. If we help the consumers to find paid for content, it will help the industry. All of this will help the industry. If we also expand the market, it will help the industry.
John.
I welcomed your comments on enforcement a minute ago, but it does seem to be a sort of conditional. Agree to get in remove of geo-blocking and open up cross-border access, then we'll do something about piracy. The Commission should be doing something about piracy anyway. It shouldn't be a condition on a digital single market. It is piracy. I do know you come from a country that actually elected the Pirate Party. Piracy is damaging the European creative industries. We are in a global business. We're in a global race to get great content made across Europe to the rest of the world. And piracy undermines our ability to be able to invest in that content and get a reasonable return. And it's not just about big American studios making big profits, which is often how the Commission typifies this. This is about my small producers in Manchester, Glasgow, Bristol, my friends in Belgium who make Flemish programming which they can only sell to Holland. This is about sustaining the cultural diversity of Europe by our rights to make a buck from what we make, and we choose to sell at a price. Now, another programme which is very popular in Sweden, Midsummer Murders, made by All3 Media, the UK's biggest selling drama, is actually very popular in Europe. Now, I know from All3Media that they vary the price depending on how they're building a market for that product across Europe. So they might sell it for quite a high price in Sweden, where it's a prime time hit, but they also sell it for a slightly lower price to a VOD platform in Poland to build an audience. If you remove our right to do that, we will have to go to those people who will give us the most money for a pan-European use. Wait a minute, that will be Netflix and Amazon, because they're the ones who will have the big checkbooks. That small Polish VOD service, which is trying to build a business for consumers in Poland, won't be able to compete. So the net effect of removing cross-border will be to favour the big American tech platforms and discriminate against the emerging European platforms. So it doesn't make sense to me either on a rights or monetary issue, but it also doesn't make sense to me if the Commission's ambition is to try and generate more successful VOD platforms in Europe.
Okay, John, it doesn't make sense to you. What about you, Helen? I mean, you know, the BT, you are a rights owner, you're a broadband provider, you're a distributor of online content. There must be something in this mix that you see to BT's advantage.
Well, I mean, I think there's three areas of interest for us. One is exactly as you say, we are originally a network company, and as time goes forward, the value of our networks and the value of our customers is really about what they're doing on those networks, and that is about having good quality and a good quantity of content available, and anything that damages that is a concern for us in the future. And then, as you say, now we are a rights holder, and we are very concerned about being able to see a return on investment for the considerable amount of money that we've spent. And then finally, for us, we're a UK business, and our business is successful when your businesses are successful. So something that would potentially have a big impact on the UK creative sector is naturally a concern for us. I mean, just to pick up on that point around piracy, I don't think we see a direct connection either, in the sense that even if you make a lot of progress on piracy, that doesn't help this sector if instead that, or alongside it, there is a legitimate grey area which undermines return on investment. And there is a concern with cross-border that that is what we will see. And I think that the grey area really is everything. In the kind of proposals that are on the table around, should you be able to port your content? So if you have a UK subscription, should you be able to access that when you go on holiday? For us, we see some consumer need there. We've done some research. It's not a burning issue for our customers, but there's about a third of them that have some interest in that. But even that, if it's drawn too widely, could have a big impact on the return on investment in content. And then I think you see that magnified again if you start to move into cross-border sales. And I think for us, geo-blocking it's the means, not the end. And for us, geo-blocking is the one really to stay away from, in the sense that you maybe can achieve some of the things that the Commission wants to, but to protect the value of markets, you're still going to need some geo-blocking. Whereas if you remove geo-blocking as a measure and just say that that is illegal, then actually we are in a single market for rights.
Okay, can I just put two of those points to you, Jürgen? First of all, on a piracy point, if you talk about portability, this idea that I pay a subscription here in the UK, I go on holiday and I'd like to access the same content when I'm somewhere else. What's stopping that person who legally is able to access that content abroad, sharing the passwords, for example, with their friends? And you know, this is something that already we know happens you know, on a wide level. How do you police that kind of piracy? I mean, if you might crack down on one kind of piracy, you might be opening a whole door to another.
Can I just say perhaps that just to meet and to discuss, I think we see eye to eye on the need to fight piracy. I think we see really eye to eye on most things here, to be honest. I don't think there's any clash in reality between our views. It's about expanding the market, it's about fighting piracy, it's about helping the industry, supporting the industry. There is no conditionality, of course, but what we have seen, honestly, what we have seen, if I just take an example from Norway, you know, it's not a member state, but it still is an interesting example. This is about music. 5 years ago, piracy of music was at 80% of the population. And a combination of enforcement and access have brought down this piracy, this illegal content download, to 4%. And these are the figures directly from the industry itself, the music industry itself. So that's, and we think also that the best way to cater for these new consumer behaviors, and as I said, again, much of this are coming from the young people, the 56% who really enjoy cross-border access, cross-border opportunities, whether it's portability, etc. These people in 5 years will be your new customers, will be the paying customers, and we need to get people on track for paying. It's really important. I think we see eye to eye to that. So there's no conditionality, but we see that these two dimensions, if I add the support to that, these three dimensions together makes for a balanced package. Enforcement, better access, and we can fight piracy, and we can also make a good effort to spread cultural diversity. When it comes to the actual technological workarounds, let me just say this. Already today, 20% of European population uses VPN, which is a technological workaround to get access to content which is not from your home country. So the geo-blocking technological workarounds exist already today. 20% are doing it for precisely the reason that we are discussing here. They want to have content from other member states or other areas. So they work around it technologically. I mean, we have full confidence in the industry to have put in place sufficient technological safeguards in their systems when they do offer portability, to be able to have an authentication system and to check that the people that they are interacting with are actually their customers. This is something that the market, we are helping on this particular area in research projects for cybersecurity and things like that. We are helping on that side, but this is also something where the market players have a very strong role, obviously.
Anthony, well, if I could turn to you, the idea for the Commission is to have a really flourishing European technological sector with, no borders. I mean, this is, digitally open across all European borders. Do you welcome that? Do you see opportunity there?
Absolutely, there is a huge opportunity for the UK technology sector. There's a huge opportunity for the UK creative industry as well, and there's a huge opportunity for them working together in having a large-scale market that is open, dynamic, and flexible, and that's why we're very positive about the concept of a digital single market. That's why we think it's a very important objective for Europe. But the question is then, well, what does that mean in practice, and what is it that we think we need to achieve? And I think it's a bit of a mistake. Sometimes we look at the US and we think there's a big scale market and it's a big, harmonized market, and that's why companies flourish. Well, anybody who's done business in the US knows that it isn't a harmonized market. There are lots of things that are variations in terms of legislation between states and so on. But what they do have is a common approach, and I think, to innovation, to risk, and to kind of trying to drive the market forward and embracing that. And I think that's what we want to see at a European level, is a real embracing of innovation. We want to see more investment in terms of technology and the adoption of digital technology. We want to see real advances made on issues of skills. So those are the issues that matter to us. And I think that's why I think the technology sector, when the DSM proposals were sort of first announced, we're slightly taken aback, I think, that suddenly this issue of geo-blocking was so high up the agenda, because frankly for the industry that really wasn't perceived as a particular issue, and actually geo-blocking is just a tool for managing and expressing any rights that you hold across Europe. And I think this is where we challenge a little bit in terms of, I actually don't think the problem in terms of how do we make sure we have access to content all over Europe. I don't think it's a problem of business models. I think there's an issue here. It's about economics and culture, and the reality is that the market, for a culture, whether it's Midsummer Murders or whatever it is, does vary across the European market, and rights holders should be able to maximise the opportunity and set prices across the European market according to that. So I think in terms of cross-border access, we don't see that as being a huge issue. And as John was saying, actually, there are lots of examples where content is being made available. On the issue of portability, we do think that is a growing market, and I think there is a real opportunity for UK firms there. But we need to get the framework right for that, because yes, it's fine if, if BT have got their authentication right, they've got their geolocation right, but if another operator in another member state doesn't, then that means that content starts to leak out, and then you've got this grey market again. So I think that's where a European framework for portability, I think, is very important and is definitely to be welcomed.
Can I ask you about a vision that one hears often from German or French colleagues, the fact that out of a digital single market in Europe, one might see a European Netflix or a European Google emerging. Do you think that's likely? And actually, why hasn't it happened already successfully?
I think actually Europe and the UK actually underplays its success in digital. If you look at, I think there have been 40 tech unicorns in Europe the last few years. That's kind of companies with $1 billion valuation. Almost half of those have come from the UK. And they come across, you've got fintech companies like TransferWise, you've got Sophos, which is a big sort of cybersecurity firm, and so on. You've got very diverse kind of examples of companies that have been really successful. So I think Europe is being successful. I think there's no doubt about it. The US was very successful in the first wave of the digital revolution that was very much B2C, and because that's all about scale. I think the UK has got massive opportunities going forward in more kind of B2B areas, which is sort of the next wave of innovation. And massive opportunities for smaller companies that are tailoring to niche opportunities in this digital single market. So I think Europe is actually more successful than we give it credit for. I think the UK is fantastic, is driving, is showing the way for Europe, and I'd like to see a digital single market that very much looks similar to the market that we have here in the UK.
That's a very upbeat message, Anthony. I've certainly heard a lot of concerns here in Europe, and I'd like to put this to you, Jorgen, that if you open up the market in Europe, if you tear down those borders, if you make it harder for smaller companies to make money, for example, in fact, those who will benefit will be the big boys, and not necessarily the European big boys, but those global players who might originate in the US or whatever, but they are the ones with the money and the clout.
From our perspective, I would say that the only winners of a fragmented internal market are big players from outside of the European Union. These are the only ones who can cater for 28 different markets. This is not a problem for them. I'm talking generally, not just about creative and cultural industries. I'm talking generally. If there are no possibilities for European companies to scale up, they have difficulties in competing. If we don't take down the barriers for small companies to be able to do business across the borders, it's not a gain for the European Union. As I said, the big dragons, the big players, have no problem in covering 28 different laws, 28 different consumer rules, 28 different everything. It's not a problem for them, but it is a problem for a small European startup. So we would argue that the more we take down the barriers, the better it is for businesses to scale up. I will give you one example. We were talking about Sweden earlier. I'm Swedish, so there's one company which started in Sweden, which is called Spotify, which is quite important in this sector. And to scale up, it had to go to the United States. It started off in the Nordic countries, and then it went to the United States, scaled up, came back, and had sufficient clout to actually expand into most of the European markets. I don't think it is in the 28 yet, but I think it's in 24 or something like this. So, that situation is not necessarily satisfactory, but I completely agree with what you say. We're pretty good here in Europe. We are very good, actually. So let's not downplay. Let's not say the doom and gloom and everything. This is Europe can. And we are pretty brilliant in the digital technology. We just need to try to get our internal market to work a bit better for these companies and for all the companies. I think that is the message.
Are you? No.
I think that, so the point here, I think, in terms of taking the debate forward, is very much about if we, if I think at the early stage of the debate, the Commission had simply said, how do we grow the market for European content? How do we take friction out of this market? How do we make it easier to exploit the long tail of content that we have in Europe? And what are your suggestions for that? I think we could have had a more kind of positive and open debate. I think that one of the challenges was we immediately got this, geo-blocking is unjustified, and suddenly everybody was taking a sort of very defensive stance. I think the challenge now for us, is, across the industry, whether it's tech players or on the content side, is really to come forward with positive solutions. I think, what are there other routes to take some of the friction out? Are there other ways that we can make, kind of content available in smaller countries or smaller territories that maybe miss out because they don't have the scale of larger countries? And I do think on the issue of portability, there's a real opportunity to make progress. But again, it's going to be the devil will be in the detail, and it's all about building commercial confidence across the platform and the content providers that is a secure framework and for portability.
So John, are you just standing in the way of progress?
No, not at all, because I think progress is here. We're doing it. The market is building these services. Content providers are selling their IP to those services. In 2 weeks' time, I'll be out at MIPCOM, the world's biggest television market, with 40 small British companies who will be selling their rights to a whole range of buyers, from small broadcasters, VOD platforms, God knows what else will be turning up. It's a really important forum and a place, where you see new opportunities. But we're doing it. I think the thing that the Commission should focus on is less about compelling, getting rid of borders, because the borders have gone. We'll sell to anyone. We'll make money anywhere. And the things that get in the way are bureaucracies, local rules and laws, and delays in getting paid, and all those things, which impact on our ability to get value. And those are the things the Commission, if it really wants to have a single market, get rid of local red tape, get rid of local difficulties, improve broadband speeds, make mobile data roaming charges cheaper, all those things which would really benefit consumers and really benefit rights owners. I want to sell to a mobile service in Lithuania that's going to play out British content. That's great, but if consumers can't get a good deal, or the price isn't right, or the cost of sales too difficult because of the bureaucracy involved, that's the barrier to European licensing, not the business model.
Aren't you worried also in particular about the industry here in the UK? I mean, we're speaking, of course, very much on a European level, but the audiovisual industry, television and film in the UK...
Europe is very important to us. It's a third of all our exports. The UK is the second largest exporter on the planet. We are very competitive. We have a positive balance of trade on exports. That's a very strong position, but I also worry for my colleagues I know in the small countries in Europe who rely on making a sale to one other small linguistic territory in order for them to make that product, because they're potentially, for my members, co-producers, co-financiers. They access local cultural funds. All those are really important. You don't want to diminish, although we are strong in the UK, we don't want to diminish other people's abilities to be sustained themselves. And you saw from our European colleagues there. This isn't just a British issue. This is an issue that faces all producers and all production sectors across Europe. And that's why I'm a bit bemused that it's been pushed forward so hard for the Commission. Now, of course, the people who find getting rid of geo-blocking most important are all the people, the bureaucrats, who are made to go and work in Brussels because they can't get what they want from their member states, like Mr. Ansip, who couldn't get his football. So I understand why it's really important for them, but it's not necessarily as important for every other consumer, but it's very detrimental to the cultural diversity and the economic diversity of Europe.
I mean, the accusation has been made, Jürgen, I'm afraid, that the Commission is stamping with big boots on this, that perhaps when it comes to portability, although it's something that in the future everybody agrees will become a big and important issue for consumers, that at the moment is not a pressing need, and that by mandating rules across Europe, you could be damaging the industry.
Well, I mean, I understand perfectly, and we understand the concerns of the industry. Let's not say anything else. But when it comes to the geo-blocking, it's a bigger issue than just copyright. It's an issue about whether we all here as consumers, not just bureaucrats, we all here as consumers, just to give an example, you want to rent a car in a member state in the south of Europe, for instance, you go on holiday. That same car, same moment, same time, same product, same service, same everything, will be 30 to 40% higher priced just because you're from the UK than if you're from and other member states maybe to the east, for instance, Slovakia or something like this. And this is discrimination based on nationality. This is discrimination based on where you are based. So, I mean, I'm just saying that when it comes to geo-blocking, it's a bigger issue. It's not just about copyright. And may I just finish on the issue of copyright. It's not an exclusive type of action that we are taking. It's not exclusive action. This is to be seen in the digital single market context. And when it comes to catering for bureaucrats' needs, yes, I mean, it's an easy thing to say, but well, people in Brussels are consumers.
I hear it from British bureaucrats as well. So.
People in Brussels are consumers too, obviously. But to be honest, we heard the same things when we talked about roaming charges. It was exactly the same thing. And they were said, this is only for bureaucrats, this is only for parliamentarians in Brussels who want to have cheap phone calls when they are there. And lo and behold, roaming is pretty important to the consumers, to the citizens in the European Union. And we actually succeeded in getting the prices lower and taking it away as far as possible.
Could I just stop you there, please? Because I know we could go on for a lot longer, but I would like to offer a couple of questions or opportunities for statement to the audience. We don't have time for many, but yes.
John Enser from Oldswang. I am a private practice lawyer and I chair the TV Against Piracy group. I was wondering if Mr. GREN would like to comment. He used the example of Norway and said about how there's been this dramatic drop in piracy in Norway. But it seems to me that that has been driven entirely by domestic services, and therefore the idea that this is something that justifies a potential interference in cross-border licensing doesn't seem to be borne out by that example. And the second thing I'd like to ask is in relation to John's example, where he said, well, his Midsummer Murders might not be licensed to a Polish VOD service. First of all, that seems to potentially reduce the benefit of to consumers, because consumers, particularly in smaller countries with minority languages, would appear to be less likely to get content, and it does seem to favour the Anglophone international elites rather than the ordinary working people in smaller countries. So I'd like to hear what he has to say about those issues. Thank you.
Shall I start? Well, the Norwegian example, it was simply an example to say that what we want to do in the digital single market and in the copyright is to work on have a balance, several different dimensions. It was just an example to show that if you work on access and enforcement at the same time, you actually have making a dent in piracy. That was the example. I mean, we can find certainly other examples.
I'll take two more questions at the same time. If you could say who you are, please. I saw you, sir.
Hello, it's Nigel Wally. I run a media consultancy called Decipher. I just make a quick point. I think the TV industry has to be very careful about the tone of voice of this. The single market is probably the one area that most Britons can claim a tangible benefit from Europe. And it's a very difficult time politically in the UK with Europe and the potential of a Brexit with the referendum coming up. And I think that the TV industry needs to be very careful to be seen to be supporting the single market because of the benefits it has delivered in things like mobile phone charges and various other industries. It's hugely beneficial. And I would make the case, I'll throw it as a question, there we are, rather than a speech, that the platform is becoming more important than a country in the way we distribute TV. If we look at what's happening with our major platforms, so Sky is suddenly a 5-country player. Selling into platforms is becoming much more important than selling into geographic territories, and it may be the time that whilst I do concede there will be difficulties, this may be the time that we have to give up our geographic focus on sales and start turning to the technical platforms, because Netflix and those guys are imposing platform rules on us. And actually we should be looking to sell to multiple platforms across a single market of Europe rather than looking to sell to single territories.
Can I just take the last question or statement as well? Yep.
Ed Shed from Deloitte. I've just got one, just listening to the debate, I just got kind of one practical suggestion, because it seems to me that You know, I buy the idea that digital single market can expand opportunities, but isn't this a question about timing of investment into the industry? So when you're selling rights, you're essentially allowing yourself to sell before you've made something primarily, so that you've actually got the funding to make content available. Yes. When you're in a digital single market, which is purely digitized, you're essentially saying it's a scalable opportunity which is driven by subs, which means the revenue is coming in after you've made something. I think one practical suggestion would be to look at that cash flow impact of the digital single market and understand, you know, how best to ameliorate the, you know, that potential gap in funding. Because, I mean, as a founder member of Monkey Kingdom, I can remember having some brilliant shows, but we were always cash flow constrained. So, you know, I think that might be one practical way forward. Less of a question, of course.
Going to Nigel's point, I'm not anti-Europe at all. Europe's been fantastic for our business. Personally, I'm pro-European. But I think there's different parts of the digital single market. There's different things. It's not all the same. And I suppose it's a graduation and an understanding of there are things that for consumer services, data roaming, absolutely. There's things like car hire charges. Believe me, I just paid more than I wanted to in Italy recently. But those are things that should be, they can do. I just don't see why this, which relies on territoriality to finance the product before we've actually made it, because now in the UK, all our budgets have deficits. The way we close those deficits is by pre-selling the rights to buyers. If we can't pre-sell, then we won't be able to make it, or we'll have to make it at a lower price. That will diminish the quality and it will diminish the competitiveness of the UK. And that really worries me. We're in a global business, not just a European business. And UK does very well. So fixating on Europe and the single market there seems to me to be missing the point that we're in a global business. There aren't enough good platforms to sell to. Believe me, I wish there were more really good pan-European pay TV or subscription SVOD platforms to sell to across Europe. That's good for rights owners. I want more buyers. You get more competition, you get more value.
So just to pick up on that, I think...
We have to be, I'm terribly sorry, we have to be terribly brief because we've already run out of time. But
okay, so I think three things. I think the ideas are appealing, but the challenges are, one, how do you continue to have effective competition between platforms? And as they get bigger, that becomes a risk both for consumer outcomes and for producers selling to those platforms. Two, how do you continue to enable regional players so that there is still diversity across Europe and aggregation of regionally relevant content? And then three, how do you continue to enable the investment model that produces the amazing richness and quantity of content that we see at the moment? The ideas are appealing, but the execution to address those three issues is really where the challenge is.
Now, you say you're in the assessment phase at the European Commission, Jürgen. Let's just open this up to all of you now. We have 3 questions for you. If you can access your RTS app, there's a Vote Now button that you'll see. Am I allowed to vote? No. Oh. I'm barring you completely. No, I am very strict. So our first question that we have for you is, do you believe the overall impact on your business of the Commission's proposals for a digital single market will be positive or negative? Could you vote now, please? And you can see it coming up behind. Okay. You can continue arguing about this over coffee, of course, which will soon follow. But Jürgen, food for thought?
Well,
yes.
Of course. I mean, as I said, we are in the process now of analyzing all the different options. Our main aim is to, as I said, tread carefully, but also ease cross-border access to good content, better choice, better cultural diversity, and broadening the market.
Okay.
I see that, I don't know if I was convincing, yeah, a bit, but maybe.
Well, we can make that an additional question at the end.
Yeah, it was 50-50 before. So.
The second question, who do you think will be the main beneficiaries of the plans to enable greater portability and cross-border access to film and television content? Will it be Netflix? Will it be European producers? Will it be European consumers? Could you vote now, please? Again. Again. Okay, and third question, please. Does the UK creative sector as a whole stand to gain or lose by what is being proposed? Could you vote now, please? Yeah, that didn't take very long to come through. Jürgen, we're going to invite you back to keep talking. You're invited now, as you all are, to have coffee where you can continue this debate and you can continue being very persuasive. For now, thank you very much for being here, everybody. Thank you very much, Anthony Walker, Helen Burrows, John McVeigh, and Jürgen GREN. Thank you very much for joining us.